Hello, this is a super quick kind of tip. I don't know if I'm gonna fold this into other tips or whatever. But I was making this part and I thought I would share it with you guys. So in Onshape, specifically Onshape, I'm sure there's others like it, but there's no good way to reference a dimension. What I mean by that is, let's say this dimension is 95 millimeters, right? If I wanted, if I wanted this dimension to be exactly half of that, right now it's locked in. You can see it's a driven dimension. So just really quickly, this is faded out because it's driven by a few things that I've done. Right, so I'm actually going to delete what I did. If I delete this, I'm going to try again, and now when I click enter, this is a regular dimension, right? It's not grayed out. It's regular, and so I can change this to whatever I want. I can change it to 50. I can change it to 95. Right? But I can't change it to this divided by 2, if that was my goal, for example, right? In other programs in SolidWorks, you can go equals, and then you would click on this dimension, and then you would say, divided by 2, or times 3, or times pi, whatever you wanted to do. That's super useful, and it's just not a functionality that Onshape has. There have been many support tickets online, on the forums or whatever, asking for it. It's a pretty, like, it's pretty crazy that they don't have that functionality, but they just don't right now. And this is an in-browser thing. I get it, whatever. But again, the workaround you can do, escape out of this. The workaround you can do, one of the ways you can do this is create your variables, right? So anytime you want a variable, can you not create a variable inside a sketch? I cannot drag this either. How do I search without? There's a little button here that's not letting me search. Hold on. Okay, wait. Variable. Alright, this is one way you can add variables. The other way is there's a variable. Oh, it's right here. There's a variable thing in here. I never really look through this too much. It's just I can't find things very well, so I just search for it, or I know the shortcut. You can click variable here, or you can just add to the variable table. Same thing. So we're going to name a variable. We're going to call it ellipse height. Try to be descriptive with your variables. This is going to be 95 millimeters, right? So it's a length. It could be whatever, but that's what it's at right now. Right? This variable, again, doesn't exist inside the sketch or doesn't exist like from the sketch's point of view until it's happened in the past, right? So drag it above the sketch, and now this might as well be part of this default geometry. Right? So we're going to go back and edit sketch 1 by double clicking on it, and we can now make this equal to hashtag ellipse height. Is ellipse 1L or 2 L's? Sorry, no equals, just ellipse height. And now it says 95, but if you click on it, it's like that. Right? And so you can do the same thing here. That is going to be ellipse height divided by 2. Great, right? And so that works. But what if you don't want to dictate what this ellipse height actually is, right? What if you want this to be based on some other geometric constraint? Right, so instead of this just being 95, we can delete that dimension, and let's say I'm going to fix this wherever it is, right? So now this thing is fixed. The center of this ellipse doesn't move. So when I'm dragging this, what's moving is, what should be moving is the height of this ellipse. For some reason this ellipse height still isn't moving. Okay, I guess I didn't need to fix that. So sorry. But say like I want this right here, right? For some reason it's very important that that's there. But I also want this to be coincident with the origin, right? So I'm going to click I for coincident, click that, and then the origin, and then boom, right? And so that's what's dictating this height right here, right? Because that's a fixed point, that's a fixed point. That's the height of the ellipse. That's half the height of the ellipse. And for some reason, you know, these aren't perfect things, right? So this is, let's say, this height is not based on like. Okay, well, it's over constrained now. Let's say this height isn't based on like a distance from here to here. It's a distance from here to something else, or it's, you know, the radius of a circle, or something not rooted in just direct dimensions. So you have to implicitly figure this out, right? And so then, like, oh, you can go to the measuring tab and you can go, okay, what's the distance between these two? And figure it out like that, but it's not, you know, 61.2. But this might not be, see, that's not exactly 61.215, it's 61.21463, and it's blah, 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 right? Maybe that doesn't matter too much, but it does sometimes when you have regions that aren't closing up and stuff like that, right? So CAD is meant to be perfect, just make your CAD perfect, right? The real world is where you can fudge it, you can do whatever you want, but the CAD is, it's supposed to be easy to make it perfect, right? Okay, so anyway, so this is the whole workaround, and this doesn't work, right? Because this doesn't mean anything now, because this can be whatever it is, right? I can't set a variable equal to a measurement in Onshape. You can do that in other programs, but right now we're using Onshape. It's free. It's browser. It's mostly great. And so the workaround is basically using a bunch of these sketch constraints, right? So what I usually do, and a lot of times this is for things that I don't even necessarily need to do this with. It's just easier for me, and I've just come into the habit. Really quickly, all I did there was L on my keyboard, L and then Q. So I'm making a line, and it's a dotted line, right? So dotted line means it's invisible. It's not a real thing. I can't extrude this. I can extrude a line, even though it sounds counterintuitive. I can extrude this line in real life. By using, like, as a thin feature, which is taking that line, it's extruding it, and then it's thickening it 5 millimeters. Or I can extrude it as a surface, right? And so then that's infinitely thin surface, blah blah blah, right? Construction, when I turn it into construction, I can't do that. It doesn't really physically exist ever, right? So sorry to, that was way more than you needed there, but and so I like doing that. I'm gonna press N to look at my sketch face on. So I like using that just so I don't get confused. You know, if there's a whole bunch of different regions and stuff, and these are crisscrossing lines, I don't want to get confused. I don't want to extrude something. I don't want to have to click on a bunch of different regions, right? So if it's something like this, all for this triangle or whatever, if these are supposed to be constructions, then I just want to extrude this triangle, and then it'll extrude this whole thing. If it's not that, then, or oops, if I don't do that, then I have to extrude 1, 2, 3, 4, right? It's not a huge deal, but that's my thought process. So coming back here, I'm going to click L, I'm going to click Q, and then I know this is what I want to control, right? I want to control this. So I'm going to make that, right? That means nothing right now, right? But I can still drag this around. It's not fully constrained. I'm also going to delete this constraint, so that height can be whatever it wants now. We saw this here. I'm going to delete that for now, actually. So it's really nothing right now. I'm going to actually I'm gonna redo that origin constraint. So I clicked I clicked I for coincident constraint, the thing I want constrained to the origin. Okay, but again, this is still we're changing the shape. It doesn't, because it's an ellipse. It doesn't like me changing the height when I can change the width. But okay, there it is. Like you know, none of these are constrained. It just, for some reason, when I click on this, it only likes me dragging the width. It can't have me drag both unless it's just like this, I guess. I don't really know. So this is, let's say this is fixed, right? So this was kind of up here somewhere. I'm gonna fix that. And so now this is fixed. It can still, so you see what portion, so the black means it's fully constrained, right? So that means this black dot doesn't move, right? If it's a black point, it does not move. If it's a blue point, it does move, right? So even though this black line doesn't move, what defines a line is 2 points, right? Or it's like a point and a slope, right? So right now this line has a point that it's going through, and it has a slope, right? It's horizontal. Is it vertical? It's one of them. But the point doesn't, right? So the point's still blue, purple, whatever you want to call it. This thing is still blue, purple. Okay, sorry. So we have that, and then I'm going to do the same thing, LQ. Bring it down here, randomly, right? And then one more time here. So what is this done? Well, in this case, it's 2 segments because that's what I want. I'll explain how to do other things. You can't do everything with this, but this is easy enough for now. So right now, all I did was that, right? What does that do? Well, these are constrained up and down, right? So this is vertical. This is vertical as well. That's how I drew it. You don't. Yeah, I'm not even gonna get into that. That's how I drew it, and that's how I want it. But so that's why these 2 are black. But the point on them can still move around, right? So I don't want that. I want to make them equal to each other. So E for equal, and now they're equal, right? So now we're saying that these are in line with each other. They're both vertical. This has to be equal to this, right? And so that there's only one. This is the midpoint of that whole thing, right? This is also coincidentally the major radius of the ellipse, right? Now if I want that to be equal to this, then I can also set that equal, right? Oops. Boom. And all of a sudden it's fully defined. I don't have any variables that I have to deal with, right? And it still works, right? And so it's fully defined because I defined this point to be fixed, right? If I don't define that, then I can move this around, I can drag it around, and it'll still be okay, right? And it keeps the ratio the same. If I wanted this ratio to be different, then you can do it differently. And this is where it kind of gets like, okay, well, what's the point after you're having like a 9 to 10 ratio, and this is like, you have to put 10 points on here and 9 points on here. And yeah, at that point, I don't know, figure out another way with the measurements and so on. But this is, it took me 10-15 minutes to explain it, but it's like 2 keystrokes and then 2 mouse button hits to do this. It takes 2 seconds in real life. So yeah, I can delete these. Well, see, this has become unconstrained, right? So I'm going to click V for vertical, make that vertical, and then I'm going to do a few more, right? Whoa. One there, one there, and so now these are equal to each other. Again, in Onshape, or not again, but another limitation Onshape has is you can't set like 3 things equal to each other. It's just always in pairs, right? So you're using the transitive property for saying this is equal to this, and then at the same time this is equal to this, or this is equal to this, right? In SolidWorks and other things, you can just say these are all equal to each other, but whatever, that's fine. So I can do that, and now this ellipse will always be a third of the other one. Right? You can do this with rectangles, you can do this with Bezier curves, you can do this with anything. But it's just something I found because it's kind of ridiculous to me that Onshape doesn't have the on-the-fly functionality. Okay, sorry. That's all.